teachers, the teachers, the teachers, the teachers.
My brothers and sisters of color, we gotta do better. No survival in this era if we turning on each other. Like a family reunited, they hate it when we together. Now let's talk about it. Listen to the teachers, let them tell you. You want facts behind your questions, Dr. Rick, give them the answer. Followed by wise words, introducing Dr. Michael Blanchard. Many guests and activists every week leading by example. When there's problems, there's solutions. Together we are the answer.
The teachers.
All right, hello everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here with Dr. Michael Blanchard, and together we are the Teachers. Welcome to another episode. This episode is brought to you by the Epic Realm community of high achievers. If you are looking to connect with people who are going to the next level, if you need your flames fanned, if you need insight, you need your questions answered, this is a community you want to connect with. The link to join that community is in the description box. Okay, this is a unique session. We have a brother with us who blessed us with his pen and his music genius. A connection of, again, Dr. Blanchard, who also is the executive producer of the theme song that you just heard. The other gentleman on the screen that you're looking at is the mind, the voice, and the pen behind those words. And there is a journey that comes along with how we get here for every last one of us. But Dr. Blanchard is going to lead this interview with Saine Brown. And we're going to talk about how we go from where we start until where we get to what you heard in that and what it looks like in the future. He's also being featured in a local publication there where he's from, and you're going to learn about all of this when we get into it. But he's being featured there, and as soon as we get that published on Monday, we'll get the link in so you can read more about him. But I'm going to turn it over, and there's a connection between these two, and I'm going to let them talk about all that between them and set it up, and I'm going to sit back and let it happen. So Doc, tell us how you.
We lost him. Hold up, we lost him.
Hold on. There he is. He's back.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, got you back.
All right, Doc, it's on you.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Michael K. Blanchard, the other half of the Teachas, and we have Saine Brown with us today. Like Dr. Wallace said, the brainchild of the Teachas intro for the Teachas podcast. And out of that came an actual full track, a full single that was released on January 31st. And so, good morning, Saine. Glad to have you this morning with us. Can you hear me? I don't, he can't hear.
Okay, hold on. It's got to be in his receiving, because I'm showing you're clear. I hear you.
Okay.
So it's on his.
Yeah, I'm having technical difficulties.
Okay, we hear you now.
But I don't think he can hear us.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let's try it again, I guess.
All right, he's coming back in now. Let's see.
I may have to put my phone again up if he can't hear.
Right. Uh-oh.
Here we go. I'm having So many people calling me at once. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, if
You want
you
me right now?
if you're doing this from your phone, every time somebody calls, it's gonna knock your mic out. I mean, or your audio
Yeah,
out.
I might
I
have
said,
to disconnect and come back in because it's giving the voices to me slow and delayed at the moment.
okay,
Let me see what's going on.
all right. Yeah, that's one thing I had to learn. I had to stop doing the phone because it'll
Yeah, exactly.
interfere with your ability to hear.
Yeah, yeah. I use a computer myself too. So he says add him back in.
Okay, all right. Let's try it now.
There we go.
Now we.
My apologies about that. I had several calls coming. I've never done this before, so
That's all right, man.
No problem. No problem at
We
all.
have technical difficulties sometimes, so it's good. So let's get right into it then. Tell us a little bit about your childhood, man, and your family life, where you were born and went to school, and your upbringing.
well, I was born in South Bend, Indiana. Um, Pretty decent life growing up. My mother, she was a manager of Goodwill in my younger years, and then when she met my stepfather, they became full-time ministry, which in that time frame, I grew and I learned a lot under a lot of teaching. Um, I also learned how to play the piano, and music became my passion as well. So being able to kind of differentiate like music and feelings and vibrations, everything like that. So that's kind of what I took hold to growing up. Also through school, I went to Clay High School, and also in my younger years at Jackson Middle School, playing in the band, percussion, and different things like that. So
So your parents had a ministry background. So how did that work out with you getting into hip hop and balancing church and hip hop and all of that? Was that a challenge, or did they pretty much
it, it,
accept that?
it was and it wasn't at the same time. Um, at that time when you're young, you know what your parents expect. So I knew how to word things the proper way, and which would help me through that with being in church as well. Like so, different words and different things I had to learn and read up on. So you carry yourself a different type of way. So if I wanted to either present hip hop any kind of way to them, it had to be done the right way.
Right, right. So what have been some of the challenges? The hip hop industry as it exists today, it's so saturated now, and everybody sounds alike, right? I mean, and then when there's a specific uh, uh, success by an artist, it seems like everyone jumps on the bandwagon and tries to mimic that particular type of hip hop. So, what do you think about that? You know,
Yeah. I noticed too in a lot of early stages of music, well, as far as my music, when I started noticing, everybody has their own favorite, and the bandwagon is easy to jump on, especially if they're paying. So once people that jump on it and realize that they can get paid from it, it only goes so far, you know. But I feel like when you do that, you kind of lose your own creativity. You lose who you are, you know. So it's not really things that's coming out of you. It's all you think they would like this because he does this, or you know. So it's a big difference when you have to brand yourself and become who you are, you know, versus following and being a follower, you know.
So it's something you touched on, and it goes right to the questions, the few questions that I want to really tap into, because when Doc will tell you, I have not only a history, a background. I grew up in the church, musical family. Mom's a recording artist, young baby brother's a recording artist, and one of the baddest drummers on the planet. His son plays for Toby Igwe right now.
That's my
So,
guy right there.
so that drummer is my nephew. Uh, and his dad is a beast, G Mays. But so we've been doing this thing, man, since I was a kid in the 70s. And so music is meaningful to me. And I grew up in hip hop. So I see the whole thing. And the one thing that caught me when he brought your uh your the intro that became the single that you guys released, the first thing I said is, okay, he's unique. Does it sound like it? Because to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, both of you guys can weigh on this. To me, Lil Wayne became hot. The way he flows, the way he enunciates, the way he pronounces. Then he produced a slight spin-off of himself with Drake. Everything since then has been some variation of that in cadence, in flow, and in the way a person's voice sounds. Now, there have been some few exceptions, J. Cole, and a few others that have solely stepped out on their own and done their own thing. And that's the creativity that we meet. When I grew up, you know, KRS-One didn't sound like Big Daddy Kane. Big Daddy
Right.
Kane didn't sound like LL. LL didn't
Right.
sound like Rakim. You know, the flows were completely different. You know, first, matter of fact, one of the first big rap battles, commercial rap battles, because, you know, ciphers were always hot. But one of the big rap battles online was LL and Kool Mo D. And the whole basis was Kool Mo D accusing LL of stealing his style.
Right.
And so that whole thing is like, where is the creativity? Where's the uniqueness? Where's the voice? And so that's the thing that stood out to me.
Yeah, how would you describe your style, Saine, compared to what's out there? Because in business, and Doc will tell you this, in business, what attracts people to you is your difference, from everybody else, not your sameness, your uniqueness. So, how would you describe not only your genre of music in hip hop, but also your branding, how you brand yourself? What do you hope that people get from that?
Well, there's two parts to that. My first part on how I started to be able to write my music. At a young age, what I would do is I would find an instrumental to a song, and I would listen to the actual song verbatim. But I would take the lyrics and kind of mimic the rhythm pattern and the phrasing, and I would reiterate the words and the concept until I built my own story that sounds similar exactly to this song. And what I used to do when I was younger, I used to play them together to see if they would line up like that, and then listen to my version and play it for people. And people would be blown out the way because naturally in your mind you've already heard this song, but the words are changed for you, and that's the point. So that's how I learned how to build music and do it differently. So that was my craft with it. You know,
So, kind of like sampling or no?
there's no sampling at all. I wouldn't take anything from them. I would literally recreate everything.
So yeah, basically what he's saying is he would use songs as patterns.
Right.
Yeah.
He would lay the pattern, and then he would go in and he would totally reconstruct the verbiage and everything, but he would keep the cadence.
Right.
Gotcha.
So basically, he created a familiarity that people would recognize without them knowing it.
Without them even knowing.
Right.
So like to make it more simple, um, I basically use the words as beat samples. So if I was to build a beat and it would be different like this, I just chose a different sound. That's all it was.
See, that's in your area, Doc. You know, I'm not a
Yeah.
I'm not a
I
musician.
am getting it. So I mean, basically, you're talking about bar construction and everything is almost identical, but the wordplay is completely different. So you create a brand new story with a similar sound,
Mhm.
with a recognizable cadence, and you have literally mimicked something, but it's yours now. And
Right.
people will likely listen to it because their brain is telling them that's my beat, that's my jam, but they
That's my
don't
jam.
realize it. Yeah,
Right.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
All right. Thanks for educating this brother here, you know. So, how are you? You know, when we worked on the project, one of the things that struck me, and Doc said genius, and to me, uh, you are a genius, man, because you were able, Doc. He was able to encompass everything that I wanted. He and I had a conversation, several conversations, and then I actually sent him quotes, you know, from you know yourself, Dr. Ben, Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Amos Wilson, to try to get him in the mind frame of what I was trying to get him to bring across about, you know, building and unity and black liberation and all of that. But the other thing that helped is that even though there's 25 years difference in our ages, he's pretty well read. So, and he's a historian of hip hop music and also black liberation movement. So that also helped, you know.
Right. So, I mean, tell me, like, that's me, a student of a bunch of different things. Music is one. Like I said, you grew up in my family. Um, you know, like I've been in the studio with John P. Key as a teenager.
Mm.
So to do that, to be around that, to be around Walter Hawkins, Keith Pringle, to be in the same room. I don't know if you know this dude, but if you know anything about vocalism and gospel music, Daryl Coley.
Mhm. Yeah.
and,
That's
and
amazing.
it don't get no sicker than Daryl Coley with vocals.
Yeah.
And to be in that, and that be the standard. But
Mhm.
you also get the history, you know where it comes from. And like if you ask Kirk Franklin right now, the first person he's gonna mention is John P. Key, because he was the change and the switch
Mhm.
of music, moving traditional gospel music into a more secular sound.
Mhm.
And then Kirk just took it to the next level. But in understanding that, you see the connectivity. So saying when you start looking at that from a hip hop perspective, I was able to see that in a bunch of artists. Like you could see the appreciation of hip hop, the history of hip hop in Pac's work.
Mhm.
You can see it in Most Def. You can
Mhm.
see it in Talib Kweli. You can see it in those cats. You can see it all the way up, and even in the early works of Lil Wayne when it was the Hot Boys.
Mhm.
You can check it out and you can see it. You can see the appreciation. You can see the studying, and then all of a sudden it became almost a disrespect of the heritage and the history and the understanding of what hip hop was about, and it solely became about money and getting the bag and the quickest way to get the bag, and we left the art behind. Forget the history and the impact, because I'm gonna lay this and then I'm gonna let you guys mince it up. Hip hop is a birth child of COINTELPRO destroying the Black Nationalist Party and the Black Panther Party. This was a birthing of a new language, a new way of walking, new way of engaging one another. It wasn't just music; it was poetry. It was the language. It was the way we walk. You know, so all of a sudden stuff became deaf, dope, fly, all of these different things, and it was a communication that the average person who wasn't a part of the community didn't understand.
Didn't
It was
understand.
a way for us to speak about stuff in plain sight and get messages across. You had Pro Righteous Teachers, you had X Clan, you had Boogie Down Productions, and people don't even realize the history and the heritage of what the fight was like. If you look at the story of Boogie Down Productions, KRS One was homeless in a shelter in New York with 700 plus other men. And every so often, a caseworker had to come in and interview them and find out where they were in their movement and how were they doing. Did you have a job? Are you going to school? All this stuff like that. And every time he would get interviewed by a caseworker, he would tell them, "Yeah, what do you do? I'm an MC." And you say, "I'm an MC," and dude said, "You can't make any money with it." MC was the same old lecture he would get. All of a sudden, one day, this cat comes in, and his name is Scott Sterling. Scott Sterling is a caseworker. Caseworker sits in front of him, and he asks him what he do. He said, "I'm an MC." He said, "Well, spit a rhyme." So Carol S1 spits a rhyme, right?
Oh, we lost him again.
Yeah, he was having some technical difficulty, but KRS-One spits this rhyme, and Scott Sterling, who ultimately is Scott LaRock, the DJ for BDP, says, "Okay." He brings him into a world that he didn't know from that point, and he was literally performing and going back to the shelter. And people who don't know the story, and for the longest time, he was still saying, "Man, I'm working with my caseworker." It took KRS-One a while to see Scott LaRock as Scott LaRock is DJ. He was calling him his caseworker. He was going out and performing, and they was making money, and he was heading back to the shelter. Now, the history in that is the uniqueness and the authenticity of hip hop and what it meant and how it grew. It was a grassroots thing. Some of your greatest people came from different places and different walks of life. You got, and then you got the Burroughs, and is birthed in the Bronx, sculpted in Queens. You got Brooklyn doing that thing, and you got all them people coming out of Brooklyn. And then you got Harlem, and you got all of this stuff happening and it's building. And if you don't understand the uniqueness and the stories and where we get it all and what it was meant to do, then you don't understand the damage that has been done. See, it was meant to be a message and an inspiration and an empowering force. And now it's the very thing used to destroy us. And so when you were telling me you were working with Saine, and I'm going to let you take it from here. When you were telling me you were working with Saine and how, you guys were going through and you were looking at the works of some of the greats like John Howard Clark, Dr. Amos Wilson, all that. I mean, it's like, okay, this is going to be good. And then when I hear it, I'm going, okay, he gets it, and that's the thing that I want to see. So I guess my question is, and Doc, you can resculpt it or reshape it if you need to. My question is, where do you see yourself in that? Because you're definitely unique. And that's the thing that I enjoy about what I saw you do, is your uniqueness. But tell me, what do you see yourself at? Like, how do you see yourself being an influence, and what is it about for you?
Honestly, I can't really place myself with this on where it would be. So as far as the action, I've always been like this. So as far as my younger peers or the generation that usually around me, I learned through my life to speak life through them, positive messages in a way where they can relate, where I can kind of meet them there. So to speak, I say I would see myself doing this still, just on a bigger scale. I mean, it's in me. It's been hard to kind of like veer away from it, no matter what, what I mean? So when I meet people and different things like that, certain literature comes out. So I still see myself some kind of way performing this kind of music in a different type of way for people to hear me. I knew I had a voice at a young age, so I kind of continue to use it in many ways that I could to those that was looking for something to hear.
Yeah, and I think Saine can bridge the gap between one generation to the next. Doc, you've written books, you've done music, you've done everything. Basically, for me, it's just an extension of the book writing and using music to reach people where they're at, and using another generation to reach people, because sometimes our age can be a barrier to reaching young people. So Saine was able to bridge that gap, not only between millennials and our generation, And so that's kind of how I looked at it when we worked on this project, you know. But he had to be receptive, and he had to be knowledgeable about the past, as you eloquently stated. You know, the whole history of hip hop just stated that where we were and where we are now. And I view him as taking us back to that era. You know, where it was uplifting, where it was our social struggles on wax. You know, on MP3 now, but you know what I'm saying.
Right.
So
So,
go ahead, Doc. Go
no,
ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Saying what's the hip hop scene like in South Bend, man? I mean, how receptive are they to new artists, and what
Um,
are there any opportunities there?
far as events and stuff like that, it's stuff like that that goes on all the time, you know. But like I said, it's the it's the ear that you find, you know, it's the people. So a lot of my music, and I don't never want to mislead people because I also make a lot of different types of music. I don't even call myself that half the time. So it's a lot of situations where music that I do make, I meet people where they're at. But as far as the local industry here, um, there's a lot of artists that I grew up with that are very talented, you know, and they all do their own personal thing. They have their own separate ways where they get their music out. But a lot of people don't work together as they should, you know. I feel like if it was something simple like this, as far as a positive message to get at least a handful of the decent people in the area, they could do something. And I feel like I probably can find those people. I'm probably the middle ground of people that I can find somebody that be willing to do this on that same level, you know, that will read the literature, take the time, and to put something out great, you know. Because I mean, honestly, anybody that's done anything positive, they know that you get more exposure faster, positive than the other way.
So how do you improve yourself? You know, sometimes we get complacent, or as we're going through the process of making it, and whatever that is, maybe you can explain what making it is to you, but what do you work on to improve yourself, or do you think you have areas of improvement that that you need to work on in order to make it, whatever that is?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's always room for improvement, you know. And I talk about a lot about that two syllable word, make it, you know. I talk about a lot about that. Some people feel like making it is getting $100,000 deal and then you all over TV and all that. Making it is waking up the next day to me. Making it is making sure my bills paid, you know what I mean? My kids are straight. That's making it to me. So I'm not really looking for a lot of things out of that because I've been blessed, you know. So it's like I know there's more. There's more to reach, you know what I mean? There's more to do. But I mean there's more people I need to reach out to as well. So and now all that is it's all in time, you know. As far as making it, that's a day-to-day basis thing for me. You know, I watched my mother struggle. You know, when things weren't the greatest. I remember eating pork and beans and hot dogs. You know, where you got your booty bread at the end. That was the last piece. You know, so that's making it to me. You know.
I mean, I dig that. I dig that. Here's another question that goes back to the connection. I've sort of made a segue that I didn't get to. I want to kind of let you guys talk about it, but I mentioned KRS-One, and the reason I mentioned him and how he came about was the segue into the impact. A lot of people recognize him as being the initiator of the anti-violence movement.
Mm,
Uh, he played a major role in self-destruction. Uh, a lot of cats may not even know what that was, but that was like all the heavy hitters uh, in NY coming together for one big joint that they dropped about stopping violence, self-destruction. And for a minute, it was powerful and it had impact and it was a voice. And right now, I think we need that so badly. And you talked about being able to pull people together for a positive message. And so it kind of left the opening for what I was hoping to get you to talk about. Uh, one of the things that I'm going to be talking about later today is how do you define success? And I think you're right. I think that we live in a culture that tries to define success for us. So we define success in our bank accounts. We define success in the cars we drive, and the square footage of our home, and how many people are patting us on our back and telling us we the man. Uh, I judge success on how many lives I change. Um, it's that simple. How many lives I change? How many lives am I positively impacting? Starting with the people in my house, and then moving outward. And when you talk about voice, which was kind of the foundation of the opening of this conversation, you have a voice, you have a gifted voice, and let's say you maintain the freedom of expression, because I think freedom of expression is important because people have different lived experiences. And to go out and, like for instance, as much as we talk about the Cosby Show in the early 80s, that wasn't everybody's lived experience.
Right.
And while it could be something to aspire to, you have to be able to bridge that so that people can connect to it.
Mm-hmm.
So you had other shows that were kids with a doctor and a lawyer as their parents. Uh, that was a more realistic, but they were close enough that you can see. I can see how you can go from this and be the next generation. You are the doctor or you are the lawyer, and so you can sort of connect. Okay, how do you see yourself? If you see yourself, how do you see yourself as maybe being that bridge, where you literally, uh, because to me, I believe there has to be that moment in your life that there's something that you look at and say that was a pivot. That's the part in my life where nobody will ever forget me. And you know, every artist has that moment. How do you see this? If you see it, this thing where you have a voice, where you pull people together, or you come out with this one thing that's just so boom that it shakes up people and it challenges the thinking of the people, and then it opens the door. Because right now, uh, major record labels control the commercial industry, and so they control the narrative and the message, and it's not really serving the community. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some people out there in them traps, for real, for real. There's some people out there grinding, for real, for real. I get it. That's a story. But do we want that message to be the last message? That's the question. Do we want that message to be the message that you just get out here and grind? If you can't run fast and catch a ball or shoot a ball, then you're gonna have to be able to spit some bars, or you're gonna have to have them vocal talents on lock, or you're gonna have to get out here and put in this work on this corner. And the truth of the matter is that very few of us get out any of those ways. Very few of us are in the league. Very few of us are kicking it in the studios, dropping vocals like Joe. Very few of us are doing that. So then if we're not catching the ball and doing that, the ones that are on the block ain't making it out because they ain't living. They either catching them big bids, or they getting sunk 6 feet, and we not sitting up and providing an alternative and making it cool. See, that's the thing about it. Not only providing the alternative has always been there, but when are we going to make it cool? When are we going to sit up there and sit? Because back in the Gap, you had cats that were intelligent. Wise intelligent. That go one right there. Just right. Cats that were just sharp, that was spitting.
Yeah.
And so you sit up and say, shoot, there's knowledge in that. And then when you get knowledge, you can Amos Wilson, Doc, and I'm done. The true nature of education is what? To empower a person to solve their own problems.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so how do you see, because I see the gift, I see the genius. My thing is, I'm asking you, do you see it yet? And how are you going to use it? I know you're talented. It comes across in your delivery. I'm talking about, do you see that level where you literally put your stamp on the world?
That not yet. Not yet. I'm gonna be totally honest. Not yet. But I know I can't. Why I say that is I've always impacted my family, my people that was around me. I've done things and they would be overly excited more than me, you know. So I knew it was always something there where I was totally different, you know. And then being from a younger standpoint, a lot of situations I just didn't fit in. You know what I mean? I just wasn't like everybody else. Like at the time, you know what I'm saying, when things was always happening, I always looked further in the future about things, or I prepared myself for what could happen when nobody's really thinking about it, you know, or I put something on their mind and they would understand where I was coming from. So I knew I was a little bit different already. So far as that is like, I got to start reaching for those different, you know, instead of the same thing that everybody thinks that's what they need, that's what they should have, you know. My
Right.
biggest issue with music today, they always tell you, "Oh, go get the bag," but they never tell you what to do with it either. So that was always the thing. Is like, yeah, you got all these people chasing this money, doing all that, and then when they get this money, they blow it, and they have nothing afterwards to show for it. Like
Right.
nobody knows the objective. You know, of course you can take care of your family. Of course you can buy you a nice car, get you a nice house or whatever. You know what I mean? But how many rappers is talking about investing money? You know what I'm saying? Putting money into something else. You know what I mean? Building something to create a whole lot more. We don't see that. You know what I mean? It's only a couple artists that really start touching those bases, like Rick Ross and stuff like that, you know. But even Rick Ross has a script. He goes off a script, he loses in deals, he loses endorsements, you know. It's a guideline that they use, you know what I mean? You got to follow that, you know.
Yeah,
So,
we saw what happened to Rick when he went off script a few
yeah,
years
yeah,
back.
it was bad.
You know, there's this whole, I mean, probably like 16 bars of spitting nothing, and it's everything that you can do wrong to a black man, no problem.
Mhm.
This cat mentioned something that they equated to date rape. One line,
One line, and that was it.
that was it.
He lost his
Snatched that
deal with
whole
Reebok and
Reebok
everything
deal.
right after that.
Yeah, that whole Reebok deal gone. And the crazy thing, nope. But see, here's the problem. The problem is there was a group of people offended by that one line that were willing to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody's tripping out, and I'm not gonna get off into the details about how I feel about it, but everybody's tripping out about Whoopi Goldberg getting set down for 2 weeks, and they missed the whole point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point is this: that the people that Whoopi offended have the power
Have
to
the
sit
power.
up and make a phone call and sit her down, and then use another black woman to do it. And it's not about whether she was telling the truth about it. Was the whole point is you missing it. Just like people get fired up and upset when the LGBTQ community throws their weight around and then somebody's hemmed up because they said something that was considered homophobic.
Mm-hmm.
And what you don't get is here's a group that really started their movement about 45 years ago. They're new in the game and they have more power and leverage than we do. And we've been fighting for how long? And it's because we refuse to unite. We've been highly individualized. And so everybody's about getting their own and they don't care about nobody else. They don't understand the leverage of power. And so we might not like what Rick's saying in all those other bars where it's talking about killing our young boys, getting them locked up for doing all kind of bull crap, or turning them into killers, or the big drug, the big drug now. Everybody's popping Molly's and Percocets and sipping lean and all this other stuff, and it's cool. We might not like it, but we're not unified enough to get it pulled. Because if we really were unified, we'll say we don't want that crap in our hood. It's destroying the thinking of our children, and it would be it would be off the radio.
It will be gone.
And so the whole thing is that as long as, like I said, as long as Rick Ross stays on script, he eats. That's a script. You could talk about drugs. You could talk about fratricide, black men killing black men. You could talk about misogyny, black men disrespecting black women. You can talk about, all of that stuff. You can call black women all kind of names. You can sit up there and use the N-word till you're sick, and ain't nobody gonna say nothing. They gonna come by you. Everybody's gonna be good. Don't say nothing about Jewish people. Don't say nothing about gay people. Ask the baby.
Yeah.
Ask the baby. You say something about them, indirectly or directly.
Greatly, and it was almost like Like think about that situation on a racist term. Like if that would have been something else and started a racial slur or anything like that that was towards a certain version of people, it would have been the same kind of uprising, regardless.
That and so that's the thing. We are offended, but we're not offended enough.
Enough.
And so my thing is when the one thing that I can tell you is with Dr. Blanchard being in your corner and becoming a force in that sense, that at some point that genius is going to rise to a certain level because there's just this motivating factor of being around people that can provide insight. And one of the things that I think that you offer that Doc alluded to is you bridge the gap. See, there are some young cats that still see you as relevant, that see us as old heads that's just talking stupid old stuff.
Right.
And what they don't realize is the same thing has been happening for generations, is that people ignore wisdom, and it costs. It costs dearly. That the game ain't changed. The verbiage has changed, but the game ain't changed. These old heads been checking out the game for a long time. We know what's up. We've watched the traversing of the game across the spectrum of reality for the last 30 years in hip hop. We've seen what we used to be able to do and what we used to be able to say, and how that creativity was taken away. How A&R promoters are coming in now and doing this, and how executives are sitting up saying that song can go, that song can go. Nope, we're not using that. And they promised you, you could get a certain percentage of your what you really passionate about on your record. But when you look at your record, it don't look anything like you started out. But now they got you because you ain't never ate like this before.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody in the hood used to look at you. Nobody cared about you. We got a cat down here in the South called Mike Jones. He was hot for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the songs they was hot for said, "Back then you didn't know me. Now that I'm hot, you're all up on me."
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that can change for these guys, is not only am I living a life, but everybody thinks I'm all of that. And they don't, and some of them know that
Man,
I've been,
man.
some of them know I'm being used to actually mislead my people, but I got to eat. Some of them are totally oblivious to the idea that they're being used. And so, that's the thing that I'm excited about, is just a young cat that, because what I'm starting to see too, and you can chime in on this. What I'm starting to see as well is a lot of the old heads are starting to push their way back into the arena, and Spotify and all of these open platforms is allowing it, meaning I can bypass major labels and still get my music out, and I can still get pretty decent distribution, and then my name will at least get people to kind of pay attention. And so, my thing, I guess, is when you think about some of the things I just said and how the music industry is really sucking, basically acting as vampires. Uh, how do you see yourself in it, being that you define success differently?
Um, reiterate one more time.
With everything I just mentioned,
Mm.
that was a point when you start looking at, when I started talking about how these cats are really selling out for the bag,
Oh
so
yeah.
to speak. And some of them don't know they're selling out. Others know, but just know, if I'm gonna live this type of life, this is the only way I can live it. So they just made up in their mind, I'm gonna put this crap out here. I know it's crap, but I'm gonna put it out here. Where do you see yourself at in that scope? Because you don't come across as a follower.
Yeah. So I look at the aspiration of life and growth and you know the maturity level at a different aspect. So it's when my mind plays a part when you get older, you know what I mean, you take care of your kids, you make sure you do the best for them until when they're in that sense and they taking care of themselves that they can take care of you. That's how I look at it. You know what I mean? So if I'm running around everywhere trying to catch the next wave and me the next person's face, I don't have time for the next generation behind me, So sometimes it's really about separating the two, Um, I spend a lot of time around, my uncles and, in my younger years like that. So I got the chance to really be around younger generations and older generations to kind of understand both. So it's like, it's really where your mind is at and knowing where you're going to end. So if you thinking about traveling and doing all this stuff back and forth on the road later on in your 40s, 50s, 60s, then that might be where your mind is. But mine, I've actually seen it where people retired, they did the best they could, the children are in a good position, and they can actually relax and know what peace really is. So, but far as like the music industry like that, I just hope I can impact a lot of different people, to where the message precedes itself afterwards. And like the names we bring up, it's like, hey, I learned this from this young brother from blah blah blah, and he had a good message with this. If I can do that to at least 10 people, that's good enough.
Yeah, and that's what the single is about. We are all, the concept here, and I tried to get across is that we all are the teachers. Me, you, everyone in the community that's trying to help, and having the law enforcement background and educational background that I have seen what happens when you feed young people over generation after generation a steady diet of toxic movies, toxic music, and now toxic social media. And so, do we have the stomach to accept a different type of medicine, Doc? Do we have the stomach to support that type? We support all the negative, music with the B's and H's and I'll kill you and this and this and that. Um, and like you said earlier, how many of those stories do we really need to hear? We've heard them for the last two generations. Not discounting, like you said, not discounting that the traps are out there, and those stories, uh, can and should be told. But where's the balance at? Where's the balance? And then where's the balance at us telling them how to get out of the trap?
I agree 100%. I think, but like I said, I think that the great thing that I see in this is that there is no ceiling to what could come out of this. And sometimes, and I think that because everybody in this world, especially for black men, there's this need to get a pat on the back because we don't get acknowledged, we're not recognized, we're invisible.
Right.
And most people don't get why black men, and I'm talking on that a little later about the need for black men to heal and that black women acknowledging black men's trauma. But the thing is, because we don't get space, we haven't really ever experienced power on any true level in this country as a collective. We tend to fight for any spot we can get or space we can get where we stand out and open for a minute. And so that pat on the back or that accolade or whatever puts us in a situation where we're striving for something. And sometimes what we miss is our hat or our legacy may not be that we are this dude. Like, for instance, let's just talk about the guys who sort of brought hip hop to the front, since we're talking about hip hop and music. We can talk about this on any level in any situation, and you'll find the same dynamic. But let's say, the first thing we ever heard commercially on a national level was the Sugar Hill Gang, Rappers Delight, right? Then we heard the immersion of Curtis Blow. Then the guys who really kind of blew the gate open was Run DMC. Right after that, the first guy you heard that kind of took it to the next level as a solo rapper was LL as a teenager. That dude had it hot. You couldn't pull up to a house and they weren't bumping his stuff, right?
Yep.
But everybody I've named to this point, what you're looking at is outside of Rappers Delight, but what you're looking at is none of these guys, we know who they are without Russell Simmons. Now people know who Russell is, and everything like that. But do you realize that we don't know who Steve Harvey is without Russell Simmons, Def Comedy Jam? We don't know who a bunch of other cats that were on that stage, Chris Tucker, Bernie Mac. all got their starts from that dude creating a platform. So his legacy is that he wasn't the greatest rapper. He wasn't the greatest comedian. He was a person that saw gifts and decided to create the platform to allow the gifts and the genius to express themselves. That's the thing. Can you be the guy? I'm not just talking to Saine, I'm talking to everybody that's listening. Because see, that's something I'm willing to be. I'm willing to be the guy that inspired the guy. You see what I'm saying? That was somebody before we ever knew who Brother Malcolm was. There was somebody in Brother Malcolm's ear getting Malcolm to understand something from a different perspective that would cause an evolution that he would actually outgrow. But it was the change that initiated. Without that conversation inside the prison, we don't know what happens.
Absolutely.
How many people can name that brother? See what I'm saying? But you got to be cool with being that legacy, because you are the link that changes things. But we got every man wanting to be the guy on the pinnacle and not understanding the importance of the foundation.
Yep.
Doc, you know, I told you this, and I told Michael Jordan this, who is younger. He just now, I think, approached 40, but he's younger than us. But I told him, I said, man, I'm not trying to do this stuff that we're doing right now the rest of my life. At 55, which is this year, I plan on stepping in the background and becoming that dude you call. Hey, right. Doc, I'm about to go out here. I ain't trying to be knocking no heads, bumping no heads, waving no signs, doing all that crap at 55. I want to be the person who sees the genius in other people and says, brother, you can take it further than I take it. Here's the baton. Call me when you need me and tell me what you need. I'm in your ear. Absolutely. But see, the problem is that's why you got pastors. You grew up in the church. You understand what I'm about to say, because you've seen it. Even if it didn't happen with your parents, you saw it happen. That's why you got 90-year-old pastors still in the pulpit, because that's the only power they ever had. And they ain't giving it up. They done had all these gifted young men come through their church, gifted young men and women come through their church that they needed to train and establish and give it to, who had some creativity beyond what they could see, who could take the church to the next level. And you wonder why that little church been on the corner in the hood for 100 years and never grew, because he would not release the reins to the next generation to grow it and expand it. That's the power we're having as black men.
Absolutely.
They want to keep it until they die.
Yeah, I'm going to hold on. This is the only power I got. Yeah. I'm going to hold on to this instead of sitting up saying, you know what, man, 55, 60, I need to move into an elder role and sit up and say, hey, man, let me spit knowledge to you. Let me spit wisdom and logic to you. Let me give it to you. And then you take it out there and do something with it. Why? Because you're connected with the generation that I can't reach. And if that generation gets lost because I can't reach them, they will be trained by nefarious entities to do exactly what I don't want them to do. And now they're out there because your 80-year-old behind couldn't reach those 15-year-olds. And so they weren't trying to hear it. First opportunity they got not to go to church, they stopped coming.
Yeah.
And now who out there teaching them? The streets. Because the streets understand their language.
Mm-hmm.
But you had cats in your church that understood the language that you could have taught. And you sit up and you did not pass the torch. You did not act as an underwriting force. And so, Doc, what I see when I see you two guys, is I see the guy with the knowledge, a young brother that's well read and already got ideas and ready that you can pass torch with. And he may be the person, because he's already said it. That's why I'm talking like this. He said, man, let me touch 5 or 10 people. One of them people might be that dude. You see what I'm saying? You pass the torch to him. You give him everything you got in wisdom. He sits up and actually respects you as an elder. One of the things that I look back, man, it's just so many things popping in my head. I look back at how they went at a certain group, went at Dr. Anderson because he said something they didn't agree with, or they saw something that they felt like was a failure or what else. And they went all in after Dr. Anderson. And I kept saying, there's a certain level of respect you give to an elder, even when they're wrong. There's a way you handle your elders. Doesn't mean you tell them they're right. That's not what you do. But there's a certain level. Because we've lost that. We lost the hierarchy and how we move. That's why you got young cats rocking up. I mean, I looked at. I'm dealing with all this. I guess that's why I'm a little emotional, man. Down here in Houston last night, man. We uh not last night, night before last. We lost a little 11-year-old kid going out to the car for his mom to get her coat. Was shot
Yeah,
and
I
killed,
saw that.
and it's happening often. And it's because we aren't doing what we're supposed to be doing in the community.
Yeah, we're failing our youth, man. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm seeing it at like I work in the schools every day. Our high schools and junior highs uh, have become they're basically mimicking and mirroring what's going on in our neighborhoods. The
right.
chaos and the violence and everything is being brought to the doorsteps of the schools now. And like you said, it's because we're not properly socializing our young men. We're not mentoring them. We're not investing in them. And that's the key thing. We have to invest the time and resources into our young people. And that includes creating opportunities for them.
Exactly. So that's my thing, man. I just, I'm excited to see young brothers his age um, with a gift and with a knowledge of the history behind what they're doing, which I think is there's a lacking in that. You talk to these cats, man, and the only reason they can even talk on Tupac is because of how popular he is. You know, as far as understanding the depth of how that brother went about doing music, they don't know.
A lot of people
You
don't
know,
know he went to go do things after he talked about it in order to make it real,
yeah,
or he would
the
do
history of this
something.
guy and the depth of or who, the fact that his mom and his aunt were in the Black Panther movement and were major players in the
Absolutely.
Black Panther movement. I mean, and most of the people don't realize that with all the East Coast West Coast beef, that Pac was actually born in New York.
Yeah.
I mean, just things about the whole thing to get you an understanding of evolution and how things work and how life comes together. And art reflects life, but art can also impact life.
Yeah.
And so we need to reclaim the art so that we can start to actually. Here's a word that somebody talked about: unity. 100%. That thing right there, unity. That's my closing thought is
That's,
unity.
that's what I call it, revolutionary movement music. You know, that's a area we got to get into more into.
Okay. There needs to be a little more direction. A lot of young kids are growing up and thinking that it's an easy objective. Go get the money, go get you a car, go do this, go do that. But at the end of it, like they don't explain to you, I'm saying, all the stuff you're gonna go through. Where, I mean, you got situations now, you got young brothers, oh, don't be no snitch or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's the hood code. But then now they put in positions where they have to and don't even know what else to do. You know what I mean? Nobody ever gave nobody the insight on what to do. It's just be quiet, do your time. You know, nobody want to be locked up. So that's the hardest thing. That's the hardest stigma right there, where they putting all this out and expect you to go shoot up this or go pop this, drink, take this, smoke this, or whatever. And I mean the consequences behind it afterwards are extreme. A lot of
Oh
people
yeah,
don't even know how to deal with it. They only know the first step of the song.
yeah. I'm seeing the consequences of it. I remember telling Dr. Wallace a few months ago how I had two overdoses in two of my high schools. So that's some of the fallout from the music, popping Molly's and Percocet and the codeine cough syrup. You know, uh, and the gummies. The gummies that they're eating with THC in them. Overdosing on that type of stuff. So,
Right.
but here we go. We're gonna close out uh, for the day. You have any final words? How can people get in contact with you? Obviously, they can find the music on basically all of the music streams
All
and
platforms:
YouTube.
Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, uh, Amazon, all that. So
Right.
the teacher.
So, Doc, you want to close it out, man?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get off. I got an emergency call coming anyway. Everybody, thank you guys for stopping in. We're gonna get off of here. I'm gonna have all the information on how to get in touch with him and get to his music and all of that. Uh, in probably an hour or so. You guys have a great day.
All right. Thank you guys for having me.